All right. My name's Paul. I've got autism and I was diagnosed age 34. And I did a video to introduce myself. I watched it back and all I do is go off on tangents. So I'll try and stay on course for this one. So I want to talk about why I had to be diagnosed. And I know everyone does it. I know this is just like a standard template I'm following on YouTube, but I think it helps to build a bit of history, doesn't it? So well, I didn't know anything about autism, apart from Rain Man. That was about as much as I knew up until the point I was diagnosed. But I always knew there was something different about me. I always knew there was something different, but I never knew what. And even as far back as say like in nursery school, I remember like I don't know if I could tell the time back then, but I remember on the clock on the wall, if the fingers were pointing at a particular area on it, then that meant the teachers were going to open the doors and we could go into the back play area. And I always wanted to play on this tractor that they had, and I used to linger around, pretend I was doing things, putting things back, trying to help, just so the second those doors open, I could fly out of there and get it. But, just looking around the room at all the other kids and everybody else was just mindlessly playing. And I'm thinking, how don't you know that it's nearly break time? So even silly little things like that, leading up to, I worked security back in the day as well. And I used to walk in a room and I got known for being the guy who could walk in a room of 500 people and go, they'll be the ones who are going to cause trouble. Make sure you watch them over there. I don't know what that is, but I don't know. It's just some things some people do is just very, very, very obvious. And I can't explain what them things are. The more honest and true a person is trying to be, the harder they are to read. The more of an act they try and put on, they just become very transparent. Um, well, that's just people for you. But yeah. So I work a job. I've worked lots and lots of different jobs, and are you allowed to say what you do on here? I don't know. Anyway, I work in the fire and security sector. It's the best way I can put it. And the responsible jobs. Every document that leaves my hands is a legal document, and it's relating to basically, hopefully, people will not die based off my decisions. That's basically my job. And I was working for a company when I was 34. When I got diagnosed, and the company wasn't doing very well, and I blamed it solely on the fact that it was a professional company, but then the boss brought in someone for marketing and they just came up with the worst ideas. Like a professional company, legal documentation. If you want to create a brand new company and you want to be fully compliant with the correct standards, having advertisements with massive pictures of cows' heads on luminous backgrounds and putting jokes up there is not going to attract the clients, is it? Like I would not go to a professional company who think they want to bring people in by being jesters. I'd go to the circus if people were being funny, but I wouldn't go to a company offering legal services like that. You don't see adverts with solicitors on the TV where they're not wearing suits and they're juggling on unicycles. I just think you have to, set the right mood, don't you? So yeah, we weren't doing well. So my boss said, right, well, everybody's gonna have to start to cold call. No, I can't cold call. I don't like it. I don't like the idea of it. I think it's a horrible, horrible concept that is only designed to benefit from vulnerable people. All right, and what I mean by that is I've never been sat there eating my food, watching the telly. The phone rings from an unknown number, and I answer it. Hello? Hiya, do you want to change your energy supplier? If I do, I'll do it myself, mate. I don't need a random person phoning me. Who ever takes up that offer? I can't imagine anyone does. But I always think of people like my nan. She could have been walking through a city centre and someone would have been like, will you give £1 to this charity or whatever? And just to get out the situation, she'll give the money. and she would have given you a last pound even if she didn't have it herself, you know? I just think of that. I just think of people in that situation where they're vulnerable, and it's just a parasitic, horrible thing to do, cold calling. So I sort of pulled my boss to one side and said, "Look, I can't cold call." And he's like, "Oh, if it's just confidence, don't worry, I'll get one of the others to talk to you." And he was like, "No, it's not confidence. I can't do it." You know, and I tried so hard for that company anyway, where I did things that were outside of my job role. And I did those things outside of my job role, hopefully for the day when I'd be asked to do something that I couldn't do, like cold calling. I could use all that, you know, I could cash all them chips in and say, remember when I did this, 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 and this? Well, can I just not do this? You know? Like I offered to work weekends to make this contract work better, and you know, my choice. I never got asked. I always offered. The head office even had a service area in the back, which had a service manager that fell into a state of disrepair. And I travelled 3 hours from where I was living to clear it, sort it, install shelving, make it functional again, and travel 3 hours back home because my boss was constantly moaning about the state of it, even though there was a manager of this service area who worked there. I had to do that, you know, and well, I didn't have to do it, but I did it again for one of those, you know, "Ooh, I don't want to do things I can't do," because my autism is, if I have the ability to do it, I will do it. I can do it. I have no problem doing it. But then there are a few things that I absolutely cannot do. And it's not because I'll feel uncomfortable phoning a stranger saying, "Hello, do you want a credit card?" It isn't that at all. It's, I just can't. I just cannot. You put that phone in front of me, you press them numbers, you put that receiver to my ear, my mouth won't open. I just, no, no, no. So I tried to explain it. I tried to say, I can't do it. Just, and he was not bothered at all. He was like, well, it's tough. The company's not doing very well. So we're all going to have to pitch in and do this, whether we want to or not. And it caused a lot of stress. It caused a lot of anxiety. I wasn't sleeping properly. I was really on edge, knowing that this day was coming, you know, and it was horrible waiting for it because I never knew exactly what day he was going to say, right, here's a bunch of names and numbers, now start. Here's a process of what to do. You know, and it was just a horrible, horrible feeling. And, you know, bear in mind, I didn't have a diagnosis. This because it was leading up to it. Um, you know, and through the years, I was, you know, the older you get, the more tired you become, the less recharge time that you get over the weekends when you're off, and it just everything was sort of all culminating where I wasn't doing well, and he he basically implemented it, and I wasn't doing it, and he tells everyone to come to the office, and everybody else worked at this office. So we're all sat in this meeting, and he's like, right, I want to thank everybody for pulling in the same direction. Well, everybody except one person. Well, who was that going to be? It was obviously me, wasn't it? And you know, it made me feel like crap again. And it was like, oh, cheers, you know, I'm not, as if I'm not already feeling bad enough. And to the point where he'd sat me down and he was basically saying, look, if you're not going to do it, the job isn't here. There isn't a job for you if you can't do this. And I was getting so frustrated because it was like, this isn't my job. This isn't my job description. You don't have a problem with how I do my job. But now you're asking something outside of all of this and you're expecting me to do it. And I'm telling you I can't do it. And you're not listening and you're threatening my job over it that I've been in for about 7 or 8 years. It was horrible, man. Horrible. And it got to the point where I was so frustrated. Like, why is he not listening? How can I make him listen? That I ultimately ended up going down the route of getting a diagnosis. And it wasn't for autism. It was, why am I different? Why? You know, because there was a guy there who didn't like cold calling either, but he could still pick a receiver up and still press the numbers and still do it and say, you know, at the end he was like, "Oh, I feel dirty for doing that." You know, and it was fair enough, but I just couldn't even do that. And it was like there's just I'm stuttering now because I'm getting frustrated. But it's so hard to explain that when you've got this wall, this block, it's like when you're trying to put, the same ends of a magnet together and it's just, it's like that invisible ball there. That's what everything feels like for you. It's like, no, I just can't do it. You just can't seem to get past that, field of, yeah, it was horrid. So, I went to the doctor and I'll talk about that one in another one because that was a, pain in the backside as well. But I went through the whole process and, went and to the appointment, and I ultimately came away with the diagnosis and the paperwork to say, yeah, you've got autism, and these are the points that are, against you. And one of them really wound me up because it said the inability to be flexible with thought process. All right, yeah, you could argue that for the cold calling, but everything I do is about compromise and we still need to get this done. What's the best way of getting that done for everyone? I'll always have that, but yeah, there are some areas that are completely inflexible, so it's half right. And I presented him the paperwork because it was the last thing I could do, and I never wanted to get diagnosed with anything like that, because it wasn't like I saw it as a negative thing. I'd managed all them years without it, but having this, irresistible force meets the immovable object, and we were in meetings arguing with each other, voices raised, kicking off, and it nearly came to blows a couple of times. We nearly had a fight because he wouldn't listen. And I gave him the paperwork, and he sort of changed. He was like, "Oh, okay, I'll do a bit of research on this." And he went away, did a bit of research on autism, and he phoned me up and he was like, "It makes so much sense now. The way you are, the way you act, the way your face can change a room's mood. All these." They kept saying all these weird things, and he was like, "It makes sense. All right, you don't have to cold call." And it was like, "Oh, thank God for that." But what makes it worse is that I offered to take 6 months off unpaid just as a way to try and get out of it. And he was like, "No, you've got to do it. Everyone's doing it." But it was horrible, man. I felt horrid. He will never understand how horrible that made me feel as a human being because it's a business and that's all they really care about is the only way to keep the business is to make the money. Whether it's you doing it or someone else is irrelevant, isn't it? So it was a horrible, horrible time. But then I got really annoyed that I needed this piece of paper to make him listen. Like, why is, a stranger saying I can't do things like that? Why does that matter? But the person you've known for 8 years saying it, it doesn't hold any weight. It was a horrible, horrible time. So I had to get a diagnosis of anything. I didn't care if I was having to be checked to be a schizophrenic, a sociopath, a psychopath, autistic, anything. I needed to know what was different because I needed to give it my boss, and I'm annoyed now because if I'm to change roles, if I pass the interview process, because I don't want an interview based off the fact that I might tick, particular Equality Act, areas that, oh, yes, he hits the minimum job spec. He's classed as disabled or whatever they want to put. And I'm not disabled at all. I have to tick that off and get an interview. No, I want an interview based off merit. I don't want it because I've got something that might get me through a door. That isn't that's not equality of opportunity, is it? That's equality of outcome, and that's not fair. And I don't know, I just don't like that. But yeah, I've kind of I don't know if you can tell, but I've kind of argued myself into a little bit of a corner where I feel a bit rubbish now because I remember it now and it was horrible, and it's been, I don't know, 3, 4 years since I got away from that place. But the way it made me feel, the stress, the anxiety, my mind doesn't turn off when I go to bed anyway. That's when my mind wakes up. So you're there sort of telling your brain, go to sleep because we're going to be tired tomorrow. You know this. And it's like, yeah, but I want to think of TV scripts and, think of how we could write a movie and, why isn't there a fizzy cup of tea? There's just all sorts of stupid stuff flying around my mind. And it just stopped me sleeping. Like I say, stress, anxious, and my body's broken from stress and anxiety. I shake, because my body has had enough of having to put up with it. But, you should never, I think the advice or the point I'm trying to make is if you think you're autistic, go and get a diagnosis. and you'll find out either way. And if it's not autism, it might be something else. Don't be like I was, where you were so fixated on why isn't my boss listening rather than thinking of yourself and thinking of your well-being and your mental health. Because on a Friday night, he wasn't thinking about me and why am I not cold calling. He was out having a few beers or with his missus, and but I wasn't. I was there really, really festering over it, and it was horrid. You've if honestly, if you think you've got something or you feel you're always stressed and anxious about normal societal things, because we are going to get stressed. There are problems. The way of the world, the way it's going. Humans just destroy everything anyway. That's just the way we are. Um, but we are going to feel stress and anxious. But if you can't drop it, if you can't leave it, if going for walks don't clear your mind, if doing physical exercise doesn't take away the mental impact that it's having on you, figure it out. See a doctor. See if you think you've always been different, always been that black sheep, then get that diagnosis sooner. Because then if you end up in a work situation where your boss doesn't listen, you will be protected under the Equality Act. They do have to consider reasonable adjustments within a workplace setting. They obviously can't impact the work, but I was watching the guy from the Aspie World, I think it is, and he was saying where he was working, he was right in the middle of a cubicle farm, and everyone was noisy, and he couldn't focus on his work. He had a chat with the boss, and he was allowed to have like calming music on headphones, and that meant he could do his work and didn't upset anybody else. Yeah, So if you can have reasonable adjustments, then great. And I'm after them now, to be honest. But my boss has just resigned, so this is going to be chaos for me because the last time a boss resigned and I ended up with a new boss, he wasn't autism friendly because he wasn't friendly, So that I ended up having to leave because, I mean, to be fair, he was the worst person at his job anyway. And that's not me being bitter because I work somewhere else. Why would I care? But his level of professionalism was lower than I was willing to work because he did not know the role. Anyway, that's a different story. I'm doing it again. I'm going off on tangents and waffling. Right. Well, there you go. That's my story of why I had to be diagnosed. Wasn't because I was just a little bit different and friends and family supported me down the route. I did it because I was going to have a fight with my boss and I didn't want to. So, yeah, a bit different, isn't it? Right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Next time, I'll talk about being vulnerable and trying to get down the doctor's route to get a diagnosis and how it didn't exactly start off on the best foot. All right. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. So, until then, keep smiling.